Hello everyone, Ross the music teacher here. Today I'm going to teach you an etude by my absolute favorite classical guitar composer, Fernando Sor. These etudes in Opus 60, we're doing Opus 60 number 6, are just beautiful. He wrote them for his students that were just starting out, but he also wrote them when he was very much at his compositional height, one of the last opuses that he actually wrote. So not only are you getting his best stuff, but you're also getting something that he distilled down for the learner. And we're going to start by just going through the mechanics of this, what fingers, when and where, how to count it, some basic building blocks, and then we're going to step back and talk about the music theory a bit. So this will be a somewhat lengthy video, and I'm breaking it up into small sections so that you can, of course, write these sections into your practice journal, which you can claim for free at the link in the cards or in the description below, and take your time and be able to do enough repetition. Of course, I have videos on my channel giving you really good tips on how to practice this stuff. So we're going to break it up into small bits. I'm going to show you the left hand first, and then we're going to run through the right hand bit by bit, and I'll also count you through it. Now, if you want to see me play this, you can check out the playlist below, and I have a separate performance video where I will play it for you, and I'll do my very best to play it as beautifully as I can. So without further ado, let's jump in. And if you need the sheet music, of course, you can visit the link in the description below or in the cards, and I have a PDF for sale on my website. Now, be aware that this is notation. I don't sell tabs because as a teacher, I feel, at least for classical guitar, you shouldn't be working off of tabs. You should know how to read music. So if you don't know how to read music yet, there's another video, which you can find in the cards up here, as well as the link below, where I spend 2.5 hours bringing you through 100 exercises on how to read music from step 1 to step 100. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so let's start with the left hand on line 1. The first thing I want you to notice is that we're in 2/4 time. That means we have 2 beats per measure. And the next thing I want you to notice is that we have no accidentals in the key signature. Now, if you need to know more about key signatures, by all means, Music Theory in One Lesson is on my channel. It's an hour long of music theory. Totally use that resource. This video is about playing. But that basically means we're using the C major scale, not only to build our chords, but also to build our melody. Next thing I'd like you to notice is that we start with a pickup measure. So that means it's just an 8th note. So when we come in, it's 1, 2, and 1, right? And we go in from there. So we're actually starting with a measure that is not 2 beats long. And then the last measure, we're going to shave that 8th note off of the end. So there are some implications when it comes to the pickup measure. We're going to talk about how to interpret that and how to tell your audience about the pickup measure so that they don't hear your first note as the downbeat, which it would be hour 1. But let's just run through the mechanics first. So first we're getting our open G, and after that we're getting our C and open E. So the C is found on the 3rd fret of the A, and our open high E is just the open high E string. Then what we're going to get is an open B, and then a D on the B with our pinky, and then C, 1st fret of the B, and then an open B. Now, something really important to notice here is that the C is a half note. So we're going to let that C ring over the open E, the open B, and then the D, C, and then when we hit that open B again, we can kind of lift up on that C and allow it to stop ringing because we have a rest, a quarter note rest after that. And then we're going to go to an A with our 2nd finger, and then F with our 3rd finger here, and then D with our pinky, 3rd fret of the B, and then we get to a C here, and we're going to do the same thing. So we get this C, but we want to stop this F from ringing because we get a rest there. So we get C, open B, and then we get open G, and then a high G, and then on that F, we want to actually use our thumb to stop the open G while we pluck the F, so that we play that rest is respected there. And then we have open high E, and then a C, and then that open G is next. Now, one thing to notice is we started our phrase on the and of the two coming in. Our phrase is actually going to end on the two, and we start a new phrase on the and of the two. So that's where the pickup measure comes in. It kind of sets our phrases up that way. So we get our open G, the two, C and E, open B, we get D, C, and then you lift up to get that open B, so that we kill the bass note, A, F, D, C, but we also kill the F on the C, open B, G, G, F, E, C. And that's like the close of our phrase, right? And that next open G, of course, is the opening of the next phrase. So I'm going to leave that out of this iteration just so that you can kind of hear it. So we get... So it feels like the phrase closes on that C, and then we'll be using the next open G to get us into the next line or the next phrase. But before we go to that next phrase, I'd like to show you the right hand fingerings. All right, let's take a look at the right hand fingerings for the first line. So that first open G we're plucking with our index, and then we're going to get our ring and thumb at the same time for those two. So we get... right? And then what we're going to be using, so annular and thumb for the A string and the open E, so we get the C and the E, then our index for the open B, middle for the D, and then we get index for the C, and then open B, and you'll see that I kind of placed my thumb on the A when I lifted it up. That's just to kill any noise. And then we get our index for the A on the G, thumb for that F on the D, and then we're going to go index for the D, middle for that C, index for the open B, and then thumb for the open G. And after that, index, middle, index, thumb. So overall, and again, we're ending our phrase on that C. We're going to open our next phrase with that open G. So we get index, thumb and annular, right? Index, middle, index, middle, index, thumb, index, middle, index, thumb, index, middle, and you'll see when I plucked that F with my middle finger, I put my thumb on the G to stop it from ringing, and then index for the open E, and then thumb for that C. Index, thumb and annular, index, middle, index, middle, index, thumb, index, middle, index, thumb, index, middle, index, thumb. And then to open the next phrase, we'll be hitting that open G with our index. However, let's take a look at that phrase kind of by itself. Moving on to line 2 with our left hand. Now remember, at the end of line 1, we had a pickup of the open G. So I'm going to kind of just throw that in. It's not on the screen, it's on the last line, but it counts as really the beginning of our phrase. So we have that we're already letting this C ring through, right? Because we have that tie. You'll see the C ringing over. And we get open G, and then now we're on our line, so we get open high E, open B, D on the B, 3rd fret with your pinky, index for that C, and then open. Again, we want to stop that C from ringing at that point. A, F, and then we get D, C, stopping the F, B, G, and then we get F, B, C, right? So that's a tricky rhythm, right? What we have is a dotted 16th note and a 32nd note. Now, how would you play that? Well, glad you asked. I'm going to play it from just the F. So we get 2 and 1 and 2, da, da, da. You got to just right before the next one catch that C, and then we have G, C. So again, this phrase ends on the 2, and you'll see that the repeat sign is there not with a complete measure, because remember, we started with an incomplete measure. We're going to end our phrases with incomplete measures. So I'm starting with the last note of line 2. I have open G, and of course I'm pretending that this is already ringing out. E, B, D, C, and then open B, we're going to be killing that C note. A, F, D, C, B, G, F, B, C, G, C. Third fret of the A there, right? So when you're playing through this, that F, da, da, that's a really tricky rhythm. The right hand fingering that I have planned out for this kind of makes it better, and you do need to stop the G ringing right when you get to the C. And what I do is, and I'll show you with the camera here in a moment, is just a nice little rest stroke with my finger, and it stops it just a moment early, but I think that that's very acceptable. So let's take a look at the right hand. All right, so the right hand for line 2, it's really very similar, so I'm going to kind of go a little quicker through this. Now, of course, we already had that C ringing, and we had our open G as the pickup, right? And that's not on the screen right now because it's from line 1. But then we get ring for the open high E, index, middle, index, middle, and I like to put my thumb on this string when I pluck that middle because it kills that note. And we have A on the G with our index, thumb for the F on the D, and we get index, middle, index, and then thumb. And then what I like to do here is middle, but then I do a rest stroke with the index because it kills that G. So we get middle, index, thumb. And that's the end of our phrase. So the second line is a lot like the first line. It's more or less a repeat with just a small variation at the end, which if you've played a lot of Fernando Sor, you know that he knew how to do this very, very, very well. All right, let's start diving in to the next line. All right, on to line 3. We're going to talk about the left hand first and then the right hand. So without further ado, we're getting our first slurs in this piece. So of course a slur means to pluck with your left hand, right? So that's what those slur marks mean. It looks like a tie, but the note changes pitch instead of saying the same. So of course we start with our open G, and that's another pickup. This is the missing note from the last measure of the second line. And we're gonna go 4 G slur to F, and then we got another G. We're gonna get a D, F, slur to E. Now something to notice is that we have rests here, right? So our first G only lasts for an 8th note, right? And it's really important to play these rests because it gives the bass line a little bit more of a character. I hear a lot of people play this piece and they just don't pay attention to the rests. I think, come on, this is classical music. This is, pianos have a pedal that allows them to damp notes and things, and on guitar it really is up to us to give character to the piece by paying attention to notes and their rests. So we're playing the first G with our thumb, and then when we play this next G, we're going to stop the first G, and then we get another G, D, F, and once we hit that F, we're going to stop the first G and slur off to E. We get another G, and then C's first measure right there. First fret right here, E, D. Now when we play it open E, we got to stop the open G, D, G, open B, D, C. And then when you hit that D, you're going to have to stop the G. C, boom. Now that's the end of the phrase. Again, we had that pickup measure, so our phrases are a little, let's say, adjusted from just starting at the beginning of the measure. And the next phrase is going to start with an open high E. But let's just listen to the end of this phrase. So we get G, G. Right, so you'll notice all of our phrases so far start with an open G and they end with a C. Now, the next open E is the beginning of the next phrase, so we're going to talk about how to treat that and when we talk about the left hand on the next line. But before that, I'd like to talk about the right hand for this one, because it's going to give you a good bit of exercise on how to damp your bass notes while you're playing a nice melody up top. Okay, so the right hand for this line introduces some really cool opportunities to learn how to damp and keep your bass lines lively with character. So we're starting with thumb on the open G, and you got to be really careful when approaching your thumb on the nylon strings, because the tone can either be really good or really bad. So you start with your thumb on the open G, and then you're going to hit the next G with your middle finger on the high E. But when you do that, you kind of at the same time plant your thumb. So we get, and now of course we do a slur from that G to the F, so you don't need to pluck it again. Then we get open G, index for that D, and then again middle finger for that high E, but you're going to use your thumb to damp it and slur off to the open string. And then thumb again, index on that C of the B string, and then middle finger on the high E, and again stop the string with your thumb when you pluck it, and use your index again for that D. Then we're going to do thumb, and then index, and then middle on the B this time, but you're still going to use your thumb to damp, and we get this C, and then boom, thumb for that C on the A to close the phrase. So we get, and of course, the opening of the next phrase is an open high E, and you're going to get that with your annular finger, but we're going to talk about the opening of that phrase with the next line, because again, we had a pickup measure here, and of course the pickup measure tells us that our phrases are starting on the end of the two. So that really the close of this phrase is your thumb hitting that C of the A string. All right, on to line 4. Now remember, the close of the last line ended with that C, and after that we had an open E that we get with our annular finger. So I'm going to pretend that that is the beginning of this line, because of course it is actually the beginning of the phrase. However, you don't see it on the screen. So we get E, D, and then C sharp. All right, so E, D, C sharp. Now the ending of that last phrase, the E, we have E, and then when you hit this D, make sure to lift that C up. Then we get our C sharp, open A, open high E, and then open D with G on our high E with our 4th finger. That's our 3rd fret of the high E. When we hit that, we're going to go to the F, and then we're going to get 3rd finger to the F of the D, 3rd fret, and then we're going to get pinky, 3rd fret of the B for our D, then open G, and then C, 1st fret of the B, and then low G, and then open B, and we're going to get 2 C's at octaves, 3rd of the A, 1st of the B, and then our E and G, and then our C again. Right. So when you're going through this, it's really important, especially at this part, that you allow the 2 voices to ring over. So we get the F is ringing out, and I hit this F, but this F still needs to ring. And then I hit this D, killing that F, but this F still rings. And then I hit open G, but that D still ringing. We get C, but the open G still ringing. G, E, and they're all ringing. So overall, let's take a look at the right hand fingerings for this one. Okay, so the right hand fingerings for our 4th line. And again, you've got a lot to practice here, so definitely check out the practice journal so you can keep track of this and be able to practice it day by day. So we start with our open E. That's actually the last note of the 3rd line, but it's the opening of the phrase, so we get that with our annular finger. Then the D with our middle finger, and then our C sharp with the index. After that, you're getting the A with your thumb, open E with your middle finger, and then thumb and annular for the D and G. And then you see how my thumb damped that A really quickly. And then we're going to get our middle finger for the F, thumb for the F on the D, index for that D, thumb, index, thumb, middle, thumb and annular, index and middle, thumb. All right, on to the fifth line here. So we're going to be getting the open high E twice. Then we get our C, first fret of the B, open A again on second fret of the G, and we get low E and G sharp at the same time. Our open B string, E second fret of the D, third fret of the B, open B, G sharp, low E, high E, D third fret of the B, index first fret of the B for the C, open A, open high E, and that's the end of the line. So the open A really is the ending of that phrase there. So overall, and the last note, of course, is an open high E, but that's going to be into the next phrase. So we'll cover that with the next little chunk of the video. All right, so the right hand for line 5, we're going to start with our ring, middle, index on the B string, and then our thumb for the A. We're going to get middle for this A of the G, and our low E as well as with our thumb as well as our index for that G sharp on the G. Then our middle finger for the open B, and then our thumb for the D string, ring for the B string, middle for the B, index for the G sharp on the G string, thumb, high E, and then I like to stop that, I like to stop that low E, high E. I like to stop the low E when I pluck the B string with my middle finger, then index for the B again for that C, and then we get A, open A to finish line. Of course we have an E here, but that's for the next phrase. All right, so overall we're going to get A, M, I, thumb, M, I. Notice my thumb stopped the A right there. M, thumb, and I stopped the low E. Okay, line 6, we're going to start by taking the last note for line 5 because it really is kind of the beginning of our phrase here. We're going to play the open high E and then F. And we get A, second of the G, open high E, G, D, third of the B, then we get F, third of the D, C, first of the B, E, second of the D, open B, open D, and then I use my third finger to get this A, second fret of the G, and my second finger to get this D sharp, which is our first fret of the D. And it seems weird because maybe why shouldn't I use my index? But that just means I can actually slide forward, and it gives this really nice type of sound without too much work. Then we get our open B and open low E. That would be the end of that phrase. So we get E, F, A, E, G, D, F, C, E, B, D, A, D sharp, E and G sharp, B, E. Now one thing that's really important is you'll notice that the thumb notes, I'm damping those, and we're going to cover that with the right hand a little bit more, but that adds some character to the bass line, and it makes it really cool when we get this D sharp to E, because we get overall this really neat A, G, F, E, D. Right, so it adds a little bit more of a extra kick to that D sharp to E resolution. We're going to talk about the music theory of that here in a moment. Of course, if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, remember you can track this stuff in your practice journal so that you can take it bit by bit. Okay, so with line 6, of course, we're taking the last note of line 5 as our beginning note, which is the middle finger plucks the high E. And then we're going to get index for that F, and when you do that, so the A is already ringing. And when you do that, you want to stop the A when you pluck that F. And then your thumb is going to catch the G string, and then when you pluck the open E string with your index, you're going to actually stop that G string. And then you're going to pluck it again, and then index, but also damp. Thumb, index, and damp. Thumb, index, and damp. Thumb, index, and damp. Thumb, and then thumb and index, middle, thumb. There's a lot of damping there, but what happens is that the bass note gets this really nice kind of effect there. All right, on to line 7. So what we're going to do here, we get 2 open E's, then a G sharp, first fret of the G, D, 2 open E's, and I damp the D on that second E to give that again extra character to the note. Second fret of the G for our A, and then third fret of the A for the C. 2 more open E's, open B, and then pinky for D sharp, or sorry, G sharp rather. 2 more open E's, and then we get our first fret for the C, and then open A, and then another open E. But of course, that starts the next phrase. So overall, I'm gonna end this phrase on that open A. All right, so there's the end of the phrase there. Now remember, the last note of this line really kind of belongs to the next phrase, so we'll cover how to articulate that in a moment. And it's really a good idea to kind of bring this up in tension. At the end of the video, I'm going to talk about the music theory behind this section, and that'll kind of add to your ability to express the idea of the music. All right, line 7 with the right hand. Some more tricky thumb damping here, but do take the time to really get it because it sounds better with it. So remember, when you're coming in, you already have a low E ringing. When you play that first high E with your middle finger, stop the low E. Then you hit annular finger again for the high E, and then index on the G string for that G sharp. We get thumb for that open D, and then another middle annular. And when you hit that annular on the open E, you want to stop the D with your thumb. Index, middle. Index, and then thumb, middle, annular, damp it again. So overall, middle, annular, index, thumb, middle, annular, index, thumb, middle, annular, index, thumb. So index on the B, thumb on the low E for that G sharp, and then middle, annular. And you'll notice every time I hit that second open high E, I'm stopping the bass note with my thumb. And then index on the B for that C, and thumb on the A. We have another middle finger for that last note on the line, but again, that's the opening of the next phrase, so we'll deal with that with the next kind of video clip. So let's take a look. M, A, I, thumb, M, damp, I, thumb, M, A, I, thumb, M, A, I, thumb. And then, of course, we're going to get this, but we're going to cover that in the next bit. Okay, on to line 8. We're going to be doing, again, we're taking the last note of line 7, our open E. Then we're going to get D and G and a pull off to that F. So that G is third fret of the high E, and we're going to pull off. Right? And then we get D, B, so D, third fret of the B, open B, G sharp, and our third finger for this E, because I like to slide it up like that for the F and the A. So we get G sharp, third finger for the E, sliding up to F and A. Then we get C, first fret of the B, D and B open, first fret of the high E for that F, and then we get this 2 E's, second fret of the D and open high E, G sharp, first fret of the B, and then A's, second fret of the G, open A, and E, second fret of the D, open A again for our close. So the way this works is you'll see the symbol at the bottom. It means you're going to go back to the symbol at the beginning and play to fine. So I'm not going to do that in here. You can actually check out the performance video, which is listed in the cards, and I will also put it at the end of this video. So, all right, without further ado, let's take a look at the right hand. Okay, coming in for line 8 for the right hand. Remember, we're taking the last note of line 7 to be the beginning of this phrase. So we get that with our middle, open high E. And then we're going to get our thumb and ring finger for D and the G on the high E. And we're going to damp, so when I do that, I'm damping with my thumb there. And then you do a slur, so that's all left hand. You don't need your right hand for that. Then we get index, middle, index for a G sharp, but I like to put my thumb there to stop the D because you'll see the rest below that G sharp. And then thumb and index, middle, thumb and index, middle, thumb and ring, index, thumb and middle, index, thumb. All right, guys, last but not least, I'm going to talk about the music theory here, kind of how to interpret that. If you need any more music theory instruction, Music Theory in One Lesson is a great place to go on my channel so that you can understand what I'm talking about. I'm not going to run into the basics of how music theory works. I'm just going to describe to you what's going on. It's up to you to go to the Music Theory in One Lesson page so that you know the vocabulary. I put a lot of effort into that video, and the reason I did was so that you can go watch it there, and then I can just talk about it in these videos. So we're starting in C major, which means, of course, we're using the C major scale. So when we open up, he has our 1 chord with a couple just non-chord tones making our melody. And when we get here, that F and D right there, that is implying a 2 in first inversion. Right? And then after that, we get a 5-7. So that G and F is implying a 5-7. And then back to our 1. So 2 in first inversion with some passing tones, 5-7, and then back to 1. And it repeats. So then we get 2 in first inversion, 5-7, 1. In the next section, we're jumping straight to the 5. And that F gives us that 7 sound. And then this is implying the 2 again, the D and the F making D minor, our 2. And then we have G, C, E, so that's implying another 1. And then we got 5 again. And then we get this D sharp, or sorry, C sharp rather. What is that implying? That's implying actually an A major chord, which is the 5 of our 2 chord. And what he's getting at is that he's going here and then to bring us to that 2 chord, that D minor chord, and make it feel more like it is a heavier resolution. So we get, and then, but the way he gives it is he's giving us the G as a suspension, and the G is the 7 of that A major chord. So he's really actually hinting at that, then to D minor, but he's breaking it up into the melody and stuff. So what we get is C, E, D, 5 of 2, suspended, and then we go 2 in first inversion, 1, 6, 4, 5, 1. That is a perfect cadence, so very cool, very common in classical music. And just isn't Fernando Sor's music great when you take a look at his building blocks? So then we're moving into the next section, which is an A minor, and we get an A minor chord. And he's just breaking it up. And after that, we go to E major, which is the 5 of that. So da, da, da. E major 7 with that D. Back to 1. Then what we have here is just a descending sequence where he's taking us through the scale, and then he's So that's the 5 of 5 if we're in A minor, right? And of course, if this sounds like gibberish to you, then you need to check out Music Theory in One Lesson. It's linked in the description. It's an hour-long video on music theory. Now, of course, it's impossible to study music theory in 1 hour and totally understand all of it, but it's going to let you know what the vocabulary words are. It's going to tell you how this works, how we find the notes, how we tell which chord they are, etc., etc. You might even want to check out my best-selling music theory book to take it a notch further. Coffee. Okay, so it's very early. I'm here on a Saturday, early morning, so I can get my lessons out to the public. Okay, so the next section we're coming in, and we're actually, with our E, G, and D, that's implying our, or not implying, that is a 5 of 5 chord if we're in A minor. And then not 5 of 5, silly me. That is our 5-7 chord in A minor, an E7 chord. So from there, that E7 resolves to an A minor. So E7, A minor, but more importantly, it's an A minor in first inversion. Now, you'll recall in Music Theory in One Lesson, we talk about the tritone, right? The tritone resolves within the scale by, if it can have steps, if it's in minor, there's going to be one whole step, but the D wants to move down to a C, and the G sharp wants to move up to an A. So we get E, E, G sharp, D, E, E, resolution, resolution, E, E, B, G sharp, and that G sharp is, of course, our leading tone here. And this is another 5 chord. It's in first inversion. That G sharp pulls us up to an A. Resolution. So you see how he's kind of staggering his resolutions. And then we have that A bringing us to D with that same kind of suspension. Of course, we didn't tonicize it this time with a 5 of 5, but we did lead into it. And then D, B, 5 again. And then we're going to our F chord, which is 6. And after that, we've got our D, B, and F, right? So that is our 2 diminished chord in first inversion, 5, 1, another perfect cadence. So you see that these building blocks he's using are just totally common in classical music, and it really helps to be able to go through something like this and analyze it by sight. I used to have to sit down and write this, but actually, as I filmed this, I was just explaining what I saw, and I saw it while I was playing it. So when you go through your pieces, it really helps to sit down and just ask yourself, what are the building blocks? Because you start to recognize them faster and faster and faster, and then your pieces become a lot easier to memorize. So without further ado, if you haven't seen my performance video, which I generally am putting out before the lesson videos, then you can check that out, or I'll actually just put the performance here at the very end of the video. Don't forget to check out your free practice journal. It's a free PDF for everybody. Of course, I sell a hard copy if you want to support me. You know, I've got bills too, just like everybody else, and these videos take a while to make. So by all means, check out the practice journal, and overall, you're going to want to subscribe. So let's take a look at the performance here. Thanks for listening to my little performance here. Of course, I put this up so that you can hear how I play it, and if you want to play it, you can check out the playlist up in the cards. Wrong way. Up in the cards, as well as claim a free practice journal linked in the description below. Definitely learn to play this one. It's a lot of fun. And don't forget to subscribe or check out the next video. See you guys. Definitely do not forget to subscribe and like this video.